Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining the Backbone Podcast, the podcast where common sense still makes sense in a world that is sick and getting sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. Now, today we're gonna stay away from all the craziness of the world. We're not going to talk about bombs or shootings or politics. We're going to celebrate the incredible legacy of what I've always said is the greatest rock band I ever saw. And today they played their final show in Birmingham, um, with an incredible star-studded lineup that performed with them, and that is Black Sabbath. They're calling it quits today, and they've been around for forever. I mean, they've been around since 1968. That's 57 years. And Ozzy, of course, at the age of 76, is battling Parkinson's disease. And if you saw the show today, it was live streaming all over the place. You would have seen that he was seated on a what it looked like a big throne as he came out. And now he came out first by himself, and he sang a lot of his solo stuff, which was incredible. And then he was followed by the band, and they only did Ozzy did 4 or 5 songs. I'll mention them in a little bit. He did 4 or 5 songs by himself, and then the band did 4 or 5 songs, and then they took their bows and they left the stage. But if you are a music fan like I am, and you grew up in the late 70s, early 80s, Black Sabbath was the band that the cool guys, the older guys, liked. There was Led Zeppelin, of course, Black Sabbath. Then there was a lot of people like Kiss. Now you got to remember, I grew up in New York, so rock music was you had to find that crowd. So a lot of people like disco, freestyle, and hip hop, of course, are the birthplace. Were originated from New York. Many people say the Bronx, but I don't care. But there were very few and far between fans of rock and heavy metal that I knew of while growing up in New York. But the cool guys, the guys who used to ride the motorcycles, the guys who had the one tattoo that was risque back then, who had the souped up muscle cars, a lot of them listened to Sabbath. A lot of them listened to Zeppelin, Aerosmith, of course. And then the mighty Van Halen came about, and people were listening to them. But Sabbath was the band that I would say invented heavy metal. We can't forget about Metallica too. They were massive. But these guys, to me, invented metal, and the lineup that they had, the people that constructed this band: Ozzy, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, Billy Ward on drums. They were all tight, super musicians. Tony Iommi, to me, I mean, you can keep Brian May and Jimmy Page all you want. Give me Tony Iommi. I mean, every riff he came up with is iconic. Every single one. Now, the band, of course, formed. Some people say 1967. Some people say 1968. Geezer Butler was kind of the de facto leader. He was in a band called Rare Breed, and he recruited Osborne to be the singer for Rare Breed. The band played like a couple of shows, and then it just fizzled out and died. But Osborne and Butler stayed in contact, and then they found the great Tony Iommi and Billy Ward, and they found them from both of Iommi and Ward were in a band called Mythology, and they broke up too. So these 4 got together, and they became the inventors of metal. And I believe that their first show as Black Sabbath was in 1969. They obviously named themselves after the movie, but they were just an incredible influence on so many people. And these guys were always thought to be devil worshippers or, into the occult and stuff like that. I think Billy Ward was big into, or Geezer Butler might have been big into, occult books and magic and wizardry, and the guy just picked ideas from these books, and that's how they came up with a lot of their material. Uh, Butler had, I remember seeing in an interview with saying. He told Ozzy about these dark figures that he was reading in this book, this occult book that he was reading, and that's how they came up with the lyrics to Black Sabbath, their first song that was really dark. They were signed later on by Warner Brothers, not for a lot, but they Black Sabbath met with swift, enduring success, and it was all built around Iommi's guitar riffs. Geezer Butler wrote a lot of the early music, and Ozzy was just a great performer. And they were commercially successful, and they gained a lot of radio play. Now, this band in those days, and even when I started seeing them around the mid 1990s, well, Ozzy had been fired from Black Sabbath, but even when I saw Black Sabbath with Ronnie James Dio, who is the greatest rock metal singer I ever heard, you weren't going to find a lot of chicks at these concerts. These were mostly guys in leather jackets, headbanging, which is fine. But if you were going to an Ozzy concert or a Black Sabbath concert, you weren't going to find a lot of chicks in those days. Women began to show up a little later on, once the band went kind of mainstream. And Ozzy in 1979, I think it was, he got fired from the band. They released Paranoid. No, I'm sorry. Wait. They released, was it Paranoid or Masters of Reality? I forget these things. But I think Paranoid was their second album or third album, and then they just took off. And for 10 years, they were incredible. For 10 years, they had hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. And they were all over the radio. And just like what happens with any band, any successful band, there becomes tension, more pressure, arguing over creative stuff. There's now infighting. And all this started around 1979. And then in that spring of 79, Tony Iommi gave the rest of the Boys Butler Award an ultimatum. It was either him or Osborne, and they threw Osborne to the streets. And Ozzy had become very unreliable, and Ozzy also had a solo project that was the Blizzard of Oz, which of course was an incredible album too. And I guess he really just didn't focus enough, or the partying and the drugs just got to him a lot during that time. And Black Sabbath replaced him. Now, they replaced him with, as I said, Ronnie James Dio, who, I mean, No guy has his voice. I mean, Rob Halford might have has a tremendous voice, but nobody has a voice like Ronnie James Dio. And Dio left Rainbow, Richie Blackmore's band, and then he joined Black Sabbath, and that's when I saw him in 1990. God, when was it? 93, 94. Everything is just a blur. But Ozzy landed on his feet, and in a big, big, big way. Because not only did he land on his feet, not only did he start his own solo career, he found a genius from Southern California named Randy Rhoads. Rhoads was a classically trained guitar player. His mother was a music school teacher, and he was an incredible composer. And if you listen to those songs on those albums, I mean, just what can you say, Mr. Crowley and I don't know, and I mean the list goes on and on. And Ozzy, he overshadowed Black Sabbath for a long, long time. As what happens sometimes with the lead singer leaves, and he kind of becomes much more successful than the band that he left. The there are a few exceptions, but the major exception, of course, is Van Halen because David Lee Roth's career went to shit. Van Halen probably got better with Sammy Hagar. Ozzy and Iommi were on the outs for a very, very long time, and they didn't get back together until around, I guess, what, 95. When did I see them? God, it's just nuts. But he definitely was. He's not passed on yet, but he was the main attraction on for a long time of the 80s, and then of course they reunited back later. I think it was the late 90s, early 2000s. I forget. I'll look it up. But Ozzy, of course, in the 1990s started one of the great tours that I remember, and I saw him a bunch of times there, and that was called Ozfest. Um, and I saw him with some incredible performers, especially guitar players. I saw him with Steve Vai, who is just an incredible. If you've heard of Steve Vai, you know about rock music, you know about Steve Vai, and this was during Osmosis. I don't know if you remember. Um, Ozzy released Osmosis, and he went back to touring. And I think the name of the tour was "Retirement is for Pussies" or something like that, or "Retirement Sucks" or something like that. And he went on this huge tour. I was there. I went to a bunch of shows in Philadelphia and uh, Giant Stadium when it was Giant Stadium, and a few other places. I think he even went to Boston to go see them. But he was up there with Steve Vai and uh, Dean Nova, I think, was also a great drummer. He later uh, joined Journey. Um, I think Zach Wild was on a few of those shows. David Lee Roth was on a few of those shows. Lita Ford. It was just incredible. Faith No More was there. Now I'm geeking out, I know, but those shows in the '90s was great. And then Ozfest came around, and I saw a whole bunch of great bands, great young bands that really hadn't been um, discovered yet. System of a Down, they were popular, but they weren't. They exploded after their appearance on Ozfest, and I mean, I was into the music scene. I enjoyed it. I was in public relations during the early 2000s, so I was in the know, and I heard a System of a Down, but y- you know, they weren't big. Once they hit Ozfest, they were huge. and I saw them in Randall's Island, which is a little venue in on the Hudson River there, in between, sandwiched in between Manhattan. But they had some incredible bands, Metallica, uh, King Diamond. I mean, you couldn't get enough of it. You just couldn't get enough of it. And we thought in those days that it would never end. We just thought it would never ever end. Of course, everything comes to an end. But when you're young and stupid, you just you you hope it never ends. You enjoy the moment. But yeah, that was the that was my memories of Black Sabbath. One of the great bands, great front man, tremendous guitar player. And I'm glad I saw them. I'm glad I was able to see. I saw two variations of Black Sabbath. Of course, I saw the reuniting of Ozzy and the boys, and then I saw the first time I saw Black Sabbath was with Ronnie James Dio, and they were fucking incredible. That dude's voice was incredible, and I saw him touring as Dio because he had broken off with Black Sabbath a couple of months before he died, and Ronnie James Dio was dying. I think he was dying of stomach cancer, but he sang until the end, and you could see visibly that he was very ill. But his voice was just you don't hear shit like that today. You just don't. Don't try to tell me you do, because you don't. But the show, if you get a chance to see it, it was pretty cool. The lineups were just incredible. I mean, the people that were there were amazing. And I'll give you the rundown. I'll give you the rundowns of the bands that you probably would know. Lamb of God was there. Anthrax was there. Alice in Chains was there. Pantera, Tool, Slayer was there. Man, had they been around forever. And you know who surprised me? He wasn't there. It was pre-recorded. But Fred Durst was there. Now, I went to Ozfest in 2001 when Limp Bizkit was still pretty big, and they were on tour with Ozzy. And supposedly there was a rift between Fred Durst and Ozzy Osbourne's wife, Sharon Osbourne. And I remember Limp Bizkit were on stage. This was at the PNC Art Center. And they're singing, and I guess they sang one too many songs, and the sound went out, and nobody could figure out what happened. Apparently, we heard on the radio going home on the way home from the show that Sharon Osbourne literally pulled the plug out of the fucking wall, and the speakers just went out because she was so pissed off at Fred Durst. So he sang Changes. It was pre-recorded, but you had Guns N' Roses there. Guns N' Roses did It's All Right, Never Say Die, Junior's Eyes. They did Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, which was just incredible. Welcome to the Jungle, and then they closed out with Paradise City. The band's only played about 5 or 6 songs. Metallica comes out, Hole in the Sky, Creeping Death, which sounded great. For Whom the Bell Tolls, Johnny Blade. They did Battery, and they can still shred. Oh my God, they're up there, but they can still shred. And then they close out with Master of Puppets. Pantera, they did Electric Funeral and Walk, of course, but they always do Walk. Alice in Chains did Fairies Wear Boots, which I thought was pretty cool. Lamb of God did Children of the Grave, which was good. And Anthrax did Into the Void. Now they also had 2 supergroup performances, right? So Supergroup A came out first, and it was called The Ultimate Sin, and it was a collection of artists. So it was Nino Betancourt, Lizzie Hale, Jakey Lee, and they did songs like Shot in the Dark. They did Sweet Leaf with Scott Ian. God, they did a few pretty cool songs, but it was Supergroup B that won the day for me, because they did Breaking the Law with Billy Corgan, KK Downing, Adam Jones, Tommy Morolo was there, um, Rudy Sarzo. Then they did Snowblind, which came out great. They did Flying High again with fucking Sammy Hagar coming out. They did Bark at the Moon with Tobias Forge coming out. And then Steven Tyler comes out with Andrew Waite and Ronnie Wood. And then they did Train Keeps on Rolling, Walk This Way. And then they finish off with Whole Lotta Love. And that was, to me, that was the performance of the day. They stole the show. But of course, the main event, those were just the hors d'oeuvres, the pasta and the salad. The main course, well, you had two main courses. Ozzy came out by himself, and he, like I said, he came out in a throne type thing. He was sitting down. Obviously he can't move around anymore. But Ozzy came out and he opened up with I Don't Know. He then did Mr. Crowley. He did his solo stuff. And Suicide Solution, Mama, I'm Coming Home. He did Crazy Train, and he did Crazy Train with Zakk Wylde. And that was Zakk Wylde was there for the whole thing, but Zakk Wylde was the major lead guitar player for that set of Ozzy. And then the rest of the boys come out. And they only did 4 songs. But once Black Sabbath came out, the crowd went ape shit. And they just kicked ass. They opened up with War Pigs. They went with the heavy shit. They went with the 4 big ones. War Pigs, NIB, Iron Man, of course, because that's what the song that everybody remembers them for. And they ended, as they did most shows, if I remember correctly, with Paranoid. And it brought the house down. But the Supergroup B that they had, that was fucking great. That was fucking great. Now, Judas Priest was supposed to be there, but there was a scheduling conflict. They weren't able to make it. The last members of Rush, Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson, were supposed to perform, but they backed out as well. And Wolfgang Van Halen was also supposed to perform, but I guess they backed out too. They had other commitments, but the show was great if you got to see it. And good for them. Great for Black Sabbath. Great for Ozzy. Bittersweet for us fans, because as we grow older, they are getting older, and they just can't perform anymore. They just, your body stops. And they start dying. And then all you have is the memories. But you have their music. Their music will always live on forever. But it just points out your mortality. It points out that when your heroes start dying, your days are numbered as well. I hate to say it like that, but it's just a fact of nature. It's just what's in store for all of us. Which is cool, because we all got to go home one day, and it's a natural progression. But I didn't want to be a downer here. I wanted to show you a picture of the boys back in the day. I hope you got to see the live stream. I hope you got to get some memories and nostalgia out of it. I think it was a great show. Again, I thought Supergroup B was incredible, and then of course the boys just brought down the house at the end. But I wanted to do that on this 4th of July weekend. I wasn't able to do a podcast yesterday because I had bounced around a few barbecues, and I was in no condition, if you know what I mean, to do a podcast properly. So here I am on 4th of July weekend. We got to see the end of Black Sabbath, some great performers, some great music, and I hope you enjoyed it. And we're going to call it a day. Thank you again for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Be careful out there, gentlemen, because Satan is always busy, and he's looking to get you. Be a man, have a backbone, because masculinity and common sense are worth standing up for. We'll see you later.